All right, hey, welcome to the show. Today we have a new acquaintance of mine, local guy, Eric Sprinkle, who is an adventurer and a photographer. And man, I tell you what, we'll put his website links in our show notes so you can check it out. But talk about some great pictures, and I'm not just talking about the ones he took of me, but those are he's got some really awesome pictures and has been on some pretty cool adventures. So I'm excited to chat with you, Eric, and talk about this whole adventurer space and how it applies in the business world.
Oh yeah, because right, who thinks hanging off cliffs and running, Whitewater? What does that have to do with conference rooms and events? Yeah, we're going to make a case that there is some overlap there.
It's a little bit more than just some BS team building thing, right? You do on the weekend.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. We're not just blowing off steam. This actually applies to how you do your work on Monday morning.
I love it.
And that's let's start off with that, because one of the things that I think a lot of people, don't think about, that they see an adventurer and they're like, oh my God, that guy is freaking crazy. He's stupid. I can't believe he's doing that shit.
Yep.
But really what you've done is you've put in all this risk analysis. So what I'm curious about is how you, as an adventurer, identify risk and mitigate it.
Absolutely. And that's the whole key there, right? Risk. Boy, here's the big key. Risk is not just consequences. You're going to fall and bust your head. This guy looks crazy. And yet, when Alex Honnold is going up, El Capitan without ropes, 2,000 feet in the air, well, let's talk about the prep he did. Let's talk about that move he did that looks so sketchy. He did it probably 40, 50, or even 60 times before on a rope. He didn't go unroped because he's a loose cannon. He went unroped because he felt so confident in what he's doing that he could do it without protection, without all those features that we would have. And that's the key right there. Risk is not just consequences, it's consequences times the potential for something to happen. If you said it, Colonel, if you just mitigate your risk down through your training, through your experience, through your tools, through your resources, that could be your team, that could be your equipment, you can mitigate that potential down to very, very minimal levels. And now consequences are still there, but the potential of those consequences are going to happen so small you don't even have to worry about it. You can do these things pretty have some good fun with those and not be too worried about what could happen.
So how do you identify those risks? What process do you have a system that you use or what? How do you do that?
Right. How do you assess risk? Exactly. We'll talk about it here in a little bit, but yeah, one of the things is, man, when you're in the thick of it, and this is talking about conference room on Monday morning, this is talking about, standing on top of a mountain and the weather's rolling in. This is you got it in Boy Scouts, right? Stop, S-T-O-P, sit, think, observe, plan. So the first rule, if you want to assess risk, you got to stop what you're doing. You got to stop and take stock of it. So when you're at that event and the meeting planner missed something and they're missing a table and we got to get all this craziness with the AV, we got to get this done now. Maybe take a breath, pause, come up with that plan with your people, right? So sit, think about what we're trying to accomplish. What's the outcome? How are we going to get there? Just real quick checklist, and then observe what actually do we have to work with? What is going on? What's going to hit us here in the next 30 seconds that we need to prepare for? And now let's come up with a plan. Let's come up with a plan, not just me, the leader, you, the people, you, my people, right? Let's all come up with a plan together, make sure we've communicated that plan. Now, plan your work. Now it's time to work the plan. Go out there, work that plan, communicate what's been going on. That's going to be 9/10 of it right there, right? Just keeping your eyes open, focused on what you came up with in your planning session, and then just executing it with your people. That's important.
As you're going through your planning sessions, do you ever use any tools like a pre-mortem or anything like that?
So if you're talking about, on the side of a mountain with weather moving in, no, we don't. But, when you're in the boardroom, yeah, absolutely, right? Let's use whatever we have possible to us, whatever tools and resources we have. And, it can be simple, it can be complex, but let's start let's start with simple and move towards more complex. Let's start with less dangerous, move more towards more dangerous in that space, whatever that is.
So in that sense, do you find that you have any issues bringing that sort of, I mean, really negative attitude about the situation? Is there as much issues? Because in the business world, you have so many issues with people being overly positive because they don't have the incentive to be negative. And that's where I found a tool like a pre-mortem is so useful, because you're saying, hey, we failed, we screwed up, what went wrong? And you're flipping their switch so that they're now thinking from a negative perspective. In your field, do you have to flip that switch as much, or is that something that comes a little bit more naturally?
That is, if you're talking about people who have been there, done that a number of times, real, true professionals, you're not going to have to manage that. They're going to flip that switch themselves because they know this is a very dangerous, high stress, high risk circumstance. You can trust these guys, right? Ask the colonel about team members you can trust. They're not going to flake out. They're not going to fold. These guys are trusted. And in that case, yeah, you don't have to worry about getting them in the groove or getting them revved up. That's not my job, right, as the leader or the coordinator. Rather, it's just bringing them together. That said, at any time, you got to be ready for someone. When we're redlining it, our brains work differently. When I'm at one end of the spectrum, I'm thinking about incentives like, job security. I'm thinking about raises. I'm thinking about looking good in front of my people. When you're redlining it at the far other end of the spectrum, that's when your incentives get, am I going to get hurt? Am I going to lose my ability to breathe or move? All of a sudden, yeah, you are in a whole different space. And it really tweaks people, because now you start to deal with, it's not that someone is lazy, it's that they're dealing with this fight, flight, or freeze syndrome. And when someone freezes up, man, that's where sometimes you got to get the 2x4 mentally out, and you really got to give them a slap across the face with it and get them functioning, getting moving. That's where, yes, you have to flip some people's switch sometimes, but that's just basic physiology. That's not like I'm mentally checking out. Something really has gotten a hold of you and hijacked your mental process.
So when you do this analysis, one of the things I think that, kind of going back to that whole perspective that the outsider has with the adventurer, what they fail to realize that you didn't just wake up this morning and decide, to go up El Capitan or whatever. There is a process. You started off bouldering. You started off doing whatever, all these sort of things that build up to that. And each of those levels have their own level of risk. But the key is, I think, that people just kind of, they open up Outside Magazine and they see these pictures and they're like, holy shit, oh my God, well, yeah, but nobody ever sees the tail. So, what I'd love to kind of walk through is, well, first, what's the most exciting, most adrenaline rush adventure that you've been on? Kind of tell us that story.
Most exciting I've been on. I think I have about 10 things that tie for number one. I've hiked active volcanoes. That was pretty cool. I've taken 12-foot boats over 13-foot waterfalls. I've actually taken 14-foot boats over 21-foot waterfalls. Every now and then, sometimes it's just you and the waterfall. That's always exciting, right? I've hung off cliffs, taken shot video, amazing stuff. I think some of the highlights are always, though, when you can take someone who is not into it, they want to, they're right on the edge of making it happen, and you can talk them together into stepping off into thin air on a 28-foot cliff over top of a river, and you can get them to jump off a cliff, all the way down, hit the water, and come back up, eyes wide open, laughing, giggling, and saying, let's do it again. That's usually where my number one comes in.
So how do you get somebody to do that? I mean, I know how we did it, in SF, jumping out of airplanes and stuff like that.
Right.
What, you get pushed out the first one or what?
No,
right.
Not quite, because, interestingly enough, when you go to jump school, it's 3 weeks. It's 3 days of training crammed into 3 weeks, we used to say. But you start off jumping off of a platform that's 2 feet above the ground. I mean, quite literally. So you learn to land, and you spend days and days and days and days doing that. And then you start jumping out of a tower, like you're jumping out of the airplane with the harness on and everything. And then even before, I didn't do this because of weather, but at Fort Benning, they have these 250-foot high towers, and you hook into a chute, and it's like a Six Flags ride. It pulls you all the way up to the top, and then they release you, and you float down under your parachute. So there's this whole process. So, I'm visualizing that, but with your person that you're with, getting them to jump off that cliff into a pond, and how do you walk them through that mindset? Because I'm sure you're not out there for 3 weeks, are you?
Right, exactly. This is one day, you're down there. Hey, who wants to jump off a 26-foot cliff? I think that's the first thing. The people who absolutely know they want to do it, they're going to walk up with you. The people who absolutely don't, they're hanging in the boats, they're watching. And I always give them the fallback. Hey, we need someone to shoot photos from the bottom. I'll shoot photos, no problem. I got that. But for those who are walking up, they've expressed an interest in it. They want to do it. So now my job is get you past that hesitation, get you past that. Yeah. So, you're standing up there, you're looking down. The rule is, this, obviously, when you're looking at that platform at Benning, you're on the ground looking up. That's not so bad. Then you're on top looking down, and oh, Susanna, this is really high up, right? And now they're telling you jump. So the key is, for me, it's a 1, 2, 3. Number one, plant your foot, right? Get ready. We don't want anybody running up or doing something impulsive or crazy, or I'm just going to run and just make myself do it. No, because then if you hit the brakes, boy, bad stuff happens. Plant your foot. Number two, look down, look below you. Make sure there's no obstructions below you. Make sure there's no boats coming downstream or maybe logs in the river that are going to float under you when you do. Make sure it's safe. And then here's the key. Count 3 and go. Do not hesitate. Do not sit there and think about it again. Don't take one more look. No, your brain gets in that freeze mode where it's like, let's keep assessing a little while longer. No. Stop assessing. That time is over. You need to go, and you need to go without hesitation. Momentum is your friend. If you can just start leaning into it, you'll go. People shouting sometimes helps. Sometimes it helps if your buddy goes first and you go right behind them, right? Anything that creates that mental momentum, that's what's going to get you over that hump, and then you're home free.
Well, talking into the, fighting past the hesitation and all that, obviously, I think there's a lot of areas in sports that really come to mind for that, especially in rugby. But what really struck me as that came to mind so much when you were talking, reminded me of the kicking process in rugby. You get taught, you're supposed to look up at the posts, get your glance, do all your calculations, and then you look down at the ball. If you look up at those posts again, you're going to miss the kick. And that's the trick there is you have to switch your gears. I'm going to kick this ball, take your deep breath, go through your funky little dance. There's some funny YouTube videos of some rugby guys doing weird things. But you go through that funky little dance, whatever your dance is, and you kick it. Because once you look down, if you look back up, you're never going to make that kick.
There it is. Flipping that switch, right? Going from the assessment to the action, to the execution mode. How do you make that switch? Sometimes it's just, boy, get me some noise, get me some people riled up, and and I can just slip into it. But I'm going to say it's one of those gears. The more you use it, the easier it is to slip into it. And that's where repetition, practice, over and over again. Let's go jump off that tower at Benning one more time. Because when it comes time to do it, from the back of a C-130, I don't want to be, hesitating or shuffle stepping out the back there. I want to be running out the back of that plane.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm hearing decisiveness is one of the critical pieces of that, and helping that person, I mean, really, we could walk this back just that one little event. You're walking them through a risk analysis. You're helping them understand that, okay,
you bet.
Somebody else just did it. They're okay. Now here's your process for your own safety and your own risk analysis. Check the water and all of those sort of things. Plant your foot and do it on this spot, and doing all that mitigation there. And then that leadership of leading yourself, that decisiveness. Be decisive. Don't don't go into that analysis by paralysis. Check one more time. You know,
Exactly.
well, there's a stick. I'm going to check one more time because, you know, and then you become paralyzed by it. And that happens, you know, when we talk about a crisis situation, like we were talking about earlier, you know, you're up on a mountaintop and the weather's rolling in. What are you going to do? You know, what's your plan of action sort of thing? Because that paralysis by analysis is going to get you
Absolutely.
killed. Yeah.
Absolutely. And again, you know, a lot of people will, they'll kind of point fingers at, well, that's just sloppy thinking. They just aren't working the process. I'm going to say it's something a little more insidious, though. This is actually something in your brain. You know, we can talk about, you know, the sympathetic nervous system and, you know, the conscious brain, the unconscious brain, but in there is a mechanism that wants to know what's going to happen next, right? Our brains are a little prediction engine, and the more information you give them, the better they can predict. Well, when you get in a situation you've never been in before, that's where it starts to hiccup, and it goes into that hamster wheel where over and over again, give me more information. I don't see any more information. Well, give me more information. I don't see any more. And that's where we come to one of the statistics on aircraft crashes. When we talk about, okay, you think about aircraft crashes, and they're usually catastrophic failures, okay? But so often, you get planes that come down, landing gear doesn't work, whatever it is, the plane skitters down the runway, you know, it doesn't break up, the wings don't come off, it skitters to the end of the runway, and it stops. And maybe there's some openings in the wreckage, but mostly the plane is intact. Okay, we're all thinking good things. Aircraft administrators will tell you this is a terrible event. Why? Because you've got all these electrical fires now in that aircraft. You've got all these synthetic materials that are starting to burn and produce a very, very toxic brew of smoke that's filling the cabin. So there's 70 people in the cabin, let's say, and we're all telling you, you have to get out, but there you are in your seat, belted in securely, and you don't know what's going on, and your brain wants more information that you can't give it. So then we come to the awful, you know, FAA statistic for, well, where do you find the people? When the people die from smoke inhalation in that type of crash, where do you find the bodies? And you, me, and everybody, we want to say the exit is too small. We find all the bodies piled up at the exit. They couldn't get out. Unfortunately, boy, take a deep breath. That is not the reality of it. The reality is you will find a couple of people at the exit door. Most of them, the majority of them, will be belted securely in their seats. They didn't move. They didn't move towards the exit. They didn't get jammed up at the exit. They didn't even unfasten their lap belt. They sat there in that freeze moment, and their brain got hijacked. And they were trying to do something, but the switch wouldn't flip. And that's where I say, yeah, again, you know, process and I would say experience is so important, because again, the more you flip that switch, the easier it flips for you, the more you're able to get into that mode. So, right, USF guys, you do it through training, and then let's do some more training. Because again, the more you get guys doing that crazy stuff, the more when it comes time to do that crazy stuff under fire in a forward operating area, they're just doing it instinctively. They don't think about it. And that's the key, where instead of yelling at your people and screaming at them because they're not doing what they're supposed to, maybe they're just frozen up. Maybe it's something else. Maybe we should have trained on fire emergencies. Maybe we should have trained on that active shooter scenario before it actually happened, because now my people are frozen up and they're useless. Whereas, yeah, you get them practicing on those situations, things can go so much smoother.
I think that really, go ahead.
The thing I was thinking of, and I was trying to think of the author's name. She was the first female Navy fighter pilot, and I heard her talk Dave Ramsey event last summer. And the thing that I thought she said, which was really kind of interesting, is they're taught three things. So that when they go into crisis mode, when your mind goes into that, you know, time slows down and all this bad stuff's about to happen, you have been trained on three options. and
Yeah.
she's talking, and she's using the story of landing a F-14 Tomcat and at night on an aircraft carrier, in a storm. I mean, all the worst conditions that you could possibly have at this.
The worst.
Like a 2-ton flipping aircraft. I mean, those things are massive, and you have 3 options. It's land, it's punch it, or eject. I mean, it was something simple like that. That's probably, pilot buddies will get all over me, but I don't know what those 3 things were because I was never a pilot. But it's our mind under crisis can only really capture and think about 3 things and create those 3 options. And I think that's a critical piece. And I imagine whether you've consciously done it in these sort of situations, when you plan things out, your mind is thinking, well, what about this? What about that? And have you run into that situation where it's like, oh, holy shit, and then go into primate mode? What are my 3 options?
Yeah, and having 3 options is exactly where you want to go. You don't want to have big complex plans that you go to. You want something simple. It can be as simple as just anything that starts the process, right? Anything that gets you thinking of it. Some guys, they'll start, rubbing their hands a certain way, or they'll make a fist. They'll make their fist really tight fists, and that like flips the switch for them. It's amazing, but it works for some guys. Other people, you'll hear them say something, and they'll say something that sounds ridiculous, like, well, what would Otis do if he were here? But you know what? All of a sudden, it gets their mind working in different ways. One of the things I'll do for people who are really frozen up, holy cow, this is crazy, but it works. Give them a real simple math problem. Hey, stay with me here. Hey, real quick. What's 4 times 4? What? What's 4 times 4? Don't look down. What's 4 times 4? Stay with me. And the minute they give you the answer, they like blink twice and they're like, okay, what are we doing here? And that's when you start talking to them and they start taking the input back in. It's just a matter of tricking your brain to get out of assessment mode and back into what's my next step? What's my next step? That's where we want to be in the execution mode.
Great. Well, I think that kind of went back to the point I was going to make a second ago was I think it goes back a lot to just framing, psychologically, how are you looking at the situation? What frame are you viewing it through? And experience plays a huge role in that. I'm using my rugby perspective on it, but I can connect it over with y'all. You're looking at that situation. You've never jumped off a cliff before. What happens when you jump off a cliff? You never jumped off a cliff before. Well, I'm probably going to fall and die, obviously, because that's the negative thing there. And if you never have a point of reference, and that's your only point of reference, you're viewing it in that negative frame. And then the repetition, the practice, all of that, it gives you that positive viewpoint of, whether it's your buddy jumping off before you, he just jumped off and he was fine. Now you have a positive frame of reference. I just did a 4 times 4 math problem. Shit, I'm looking good today. I got a positive mind. Like I got a positive mindset now, and you're moving forward like that.
Right. And that's the key right there, right? Training. If you want the poor man's tool to get past this in your business, in your work teams, your project teams, out there with your operators, in the jungle, if you want to get past this, training is the key. Because the more often I do it, boy, it just starts to cement this wonderful little shortcut to execution mode known as instinct. I just fall into it. I'm not even thinking about it. If you do X and Y, I just naturally respond with Z. I don't even have to think about it. And that's the key right there, Cam. You don't have to think about it. You don't consciously have to make that decision. Your body just automatically falls into it for you. Why? Because you did all this training.
When you're going through your training and your repetition in that process, do you do the stress training type level? Because what this reminds me of so much is a rugby coach we had a while back, one of our good friends, John Patterson. He'd always say, what do you do when you don't have oxygen in the brain? And that's what he would make us do. He'd make us run our asses off so that then when you don't have oxygen in the brain and he asks you a simple rugby question, in this area of the field, if we have the ball here, what do we do? We all know the answer, but we just ran, 10 hills. And it's all about flipping that mindset so that then when you're in the 80th minute of the game, you don't have oxygen in your brain. It doesn't matter. Your instincts are taking over. Do you do any sort of stress training like that, or is it more hands-on in that sense?
I like both. I like adopting a training that gets you as close to the real thing as possible. Mm-hmm. Talk to the colonel about that, because that's exactly where the military, man, they nail it. You know, we're going to put you in as real world a training as we can possibly get, because that's going to get that instinct in place where I did it in the fake scenario, but now I don't connect. That's why, guys, when you're doing fire drills, go look at your people next time you're doing a fire drill in your building. Are they actively engaging with it, or are they having a side conversation because we're doing a drill? Mm-hmm. When the real fire drill comes, you are amazed how many people are just, quote unquote, milling. They're not talking about it, right? We got so many people, again, tragedy. So many people on 9/11 were observed by fire marshals and other people trying to clear floors, groups of people right next to the stairwell. And what are they doing? They're talking. They're talking about, what should we do? I don't know what to do. What do you think we should do? I don't know. We should probably get out. Yeah, we should probably get out. That's a good idea. How should we get out? Should we do the stairs? I don't know if we should do the stairs. People do that, right? You see it and you walk out of Safeway, there's a person laying on the ground. What do you see around them? There's a group of people talking about, should we call 911? I think he called 911. Well, this is what we do, right? We mill. So again, you just want to get the person as used to the situation as possible, where they just act. They just step in. Excuse me, I'm, wilderness certified responder. Can I jump in here and have a look at this real quick? And then you start thinking, then you start going through those steps, right? Medical people are wonderful, right? Check all care, right? That you just have your checklist that you go through. So you don't have to think in that scenario. You just go from action to action to action. And the more you can ramp it up, man, that's where people are thinking clearly when it actually happens.
It's that sort of mob mentality when nobody wants to take charge. And It's amazing, like you said, somebody lying on the ground in the parking lot, everybody's standing around, and then somebody walks up and, gets down on a knee and puts, starts to check the person out. And then everybody else is like, oh, hey, first aid, let me start to do, it's
absolutely
really a weird sort of sense, but it's not that hard to be that person, whether it's, something, an emergency situation like we were talking about, or even, in the office, it's that, well, are we gonna do something? That guy stole $20. We thought he was the right guy to be our accountant or whatever, and he stole $20. What are we gonna do? Well, we're gonna talk about it. We're gonna do this. We're gonna do that. Or are we gonna take some action? I mean, all it takes is one person to step forward, and you don't have to be freaking Patton or anything like that. One person to step forward, and then everybody falls in. And this kind of leads me to something I was wanting to. I'm good with my segues today. This is awesome, because I wanted to talk a little bit about in the adventure sense of teamwork, and because we see that awesome documentary is Solo about going back to El Capitan.
Yeah.
He's soloing, but look at the team of people around him. And I'm really curious, when you put together, you start to say, hey, here's my next adventure. You build that team. What do you do? How are you building that team?
Right. You're looking for the individual roles. Who's going to be my idea guy? Who's going to be my rigger? Who just knows ropes and carabiners and all that crazy stuff, like nobody's business. Who are my active people? In a rescue scenario, who am I going to put in the water? Who can I trust in the water? Because that's where the most dangerous role, right? Who can, if it's a rescue scenario, who's good with a throw bag? You're going to be my downstream safety, right? Who's got a whistle? Who is relatively useless because they just have no experience in this space, but I still got to use them. What can I do that is the low barriers to entry as possible? Hey, do you have a whistle? Yeah, go upstream. You're my upstream spotter. Let every boat coming down know to eddy out. We're going to have lines across the river doing a rescue or something like that. So you just, again, it's all about what came before. When you get to the moment where that situation happens and blows up, Everything you've done before that is going to inform you on what you do now. Who's my team? I already have my team in mind. I just need to communicate with them, right? And then we're coming to leadership, right? As a good leader, are you always looking at your team in terms of, yeah, if this happened, this is the person I want by my side. And however, if this happened, I want this group. Are you just running those scenarios in your mind so that when they come to it, again, I don't have to think so much. I'm just acting on this little mental checklist I already had.
So when that's an ad hoc scenario, I'm kind of curious. So, you're going to go climb El Capitan, or you're going to run, I just drew a blank on that river in Africa.
The Zambezi, the White Nile. Oh yeah, we got all kinds of crazy.
Of it. You're going to run that. You're going to do that 3-week run down that river. How do you pick your team?
Now you're looking for people who are the best in their place, right? You're looking for who are the best rowers, who are the best paddlers, who are the best kayakers, who are the guys that have been there before and I've seen them in action before. That's going to be the key, because when you got guys that you think they talk a big game, but in wilderness and in combat, there are no posers. You are exactly precisely what you are, okay? And so I need to know that before you get there. This is where, and now I'll throw this out to Cam, but boy, referrals are worth gold. I mean, if you can have another guy you trust and he talks about someone he trusts, that is so worth the price of admission right there, because I want to know somebody has seen this person in high stress environments before and they function, they perform. So when you find those guys who are at the top of their game, you grab onto them and you do not let them go. And the more you know they've been there, done that, and they've performed brilliantly, well, now you grab hold of these guys and you make them be a part of your team, whether they like it or not. You drag them kicking and screaming into your scenario.
Well, and I'd say even those are the best team members to kind of even expand on that a little bit more, besides the performance and the referral and that type of thing. When you have those type of connections in a team, your communication gets streamlined like crazy. You guys all have that same lingo. You guys all got the same slang. You guys all grew up east side of Colorado Springs at the same high school, whatever it is. You guys all got that same type of thing down. Like, I know there's people that come to mind for me. I got lots of good friends. I know I could go out, and it's the guys I played 5 years of rugby with that I know I can do anything with them because we're on the same page, even if we haven't talked to each other in 2 years. We're just that type of communication. And that's what you get out of a referral process, especially, is you're going to keep that kind of communication, that kind of connection moving forward.
Yeah. I know it sounds very secret agent-y, but that's exactly what it is. In those secret agent movies where someone tells the guy, assemble your team and meet us in Budapest in 2 weeks. That's what you're doing every day as a manager, man. I mean, come on, you're assembling this project team. Are you just taking whoever you're thrown to, the more the merrier? Or are you being intentional about who's been there before, who is an expert in their field, who's going to represent? And most of all, do I have these people I feel comfortable with? Have I used these people in small scenarios? Because those are the people I want in the big scenario. And if you haven't tested it, I'm with you, man. Get these guys out there so you can work together and kind of develop that language that's all your own, so that, again, when the big game comes, you guys don't even have to think about so much of this. It's so much is subconscious. You're just working together without even thinking. You're in that flow. Works so much better.
Oh, I have to tie that back into rugby a little bit more. Just makes me think of, if you remember this, Dad, would have been probably sophomore, junior and senior year. I think we started doing this. We had played together, same guys, for 4 or 5 years at this point. We started using hand signals for play calls.
There you go.
It was one of those things. It's like, you can't really, I've never been able to force that on any team I've coached, because you can't force it. It doesn't work out that way. I can't say, come up with 10 hand signals and you'll get there. But, Patty, who I was playing with for 4 years, he's been lobbing me the ball for 3 of those. If I say, hey, this funky hand signal means Donkey Kong and that's our play, that's it. It's Donkey Kong now. And we're on the same sheet of music, because you got that same type of communication, that same lingo going the whole time.
That's it. And you see these high-performing teams at work on the field, and they have this unspoken language We're out there playing like ultimate frisbee with a group of guys, and they were from Texas, and we were like, "Do you want to play?" Yeah. And they had a team that they play together. We're out there playing with them. We're just horsing around. These guys are yelling across the field, "Twinkies, corn chips." We're like, what the heck is that? And they would be running these elaborate plays. I'm like, oh my gosh, these guys have played together. Yeah, they
ringers, hustlers.
They're hustling you, yeah.
Right.
Hope you didn't put any money on that game.
Negative. They burned us bad, but it was fascinating to watch, even from the losing side, I gotta say.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of my favorite things to talk about when I talk about high performing teams is that flow. It's the understanding what your teammate is going to do before he does it, and you just naturally anticipate those things. In the sports sense, what space he's going to be in, so that you can put the puck or the rugby ball or soccer ball in that space, because that's where he's going, is that space.
You know who dances around with the ball and who runs forward and hits somebody.
Yeah. Hey, Eric, I'm curious what projects you got going on now. You got any big adventures planned? You got some books coming out? What's happening next for you?
Big adventures, yeah. I'm looking currently. Boy, I had a friend, life went sideways, and Christmas plans kind of went a different direction. Maybe that's quelled now, so I might be back to my original plan. Doing a little rim to river Grand Canyon trip, and waking up on Christmas morning at the bottom of the Grand Canyon, because why not? Merry Christmas, right?
Awesome.
That's awesome.
Looking at pulling that out. Books, I tell you what, we just had the youth edition of our Adventure Devotional book come out in March. Pretty jazzed about that. So Adventure Devos, if you go on Amazon, you can look for Eric Sprinkle or Adventure Devos, DEVOS. We got the men's edition, which came out originally. Women were reading it and liking it. So we came out with a women's edition, and then, they were like, well, while you're at it, why not come out with a youth edition? That just came out in March. We're really jazzed about that, but that's super fun. A lot of what we're talking about, right? Just, ideas for, rappelling off cliffs and change management, camping in the Grand Canyon, getting, drawing lines in life, why we have to do that type of stuff. Really, really fun stuff.
Oh, that's great. And I love the focus on the youth, because, pulling them out to do these sort of things that take you out of the comfort zone. It is
totally. Turn the screen off and let's go have some fun outdoors.
Oh yeah. That's so great. You reminded me when you said going to the Grand Canyon. It just flashed in my head when I was a kid. I was an explorer scout. We used to go to the Rio Grande lower canyons in Whitewater, canoe through that. I think I did it 2 or 3 times in high school, and great adventure to do. And so I can envision, not quite the same. I mean, Grand Canyon has a reason it's the Grand Canyon. And, lower canyons of the Rio Grande, but that's gonna. I'm excited for you, man. That'll be fun.
And then you take photos, you take video, you come back, and then as a speaker, my job is go get groups excited about their work, their lives, their relationships, whatever. Because man, you take risks. And boy, every risk makes the next one a little easier, the next one a little easier, the next one a little easier. And at some point you find the next risk I take changes my life forever. And it was easy. I didn't even have to think about it. Didn't even have to worry about it, because all those risks you took up to that point just paved the way for the one that really ends up being life-changing.
Oh, I love that. And, actually, with my clients that I coach, that's one of the things I work with them on is, hey, you can do that over here in this part of your life. You can do it over here in this part of your life, right? So if you're able to take on these risks and challenges out on a river, jumping off a cliff or whatever, why can't you do that in business? Why can't you analyze the problem set, use that same mindset and problem understanding and risk mitigation and risk acceptance to go take that step in the business world? Why not? right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I know public speaking is everybody's nightmare, but ladies and gentlemen, if you jump off a 26-foot cliff into a river on Sunday afternoon, Monday morning, when you have to get up front of your work team and give that presentation, it's just going to be a little bit easier. Because I'm not flinging myself off a cliff, am I? How bad can it be? You're conditioned. You have conditioned yourself to it, and it makes it easier. Oh, yeah.
Awesome. So how can people find you, get in touch with you, Eric?
So my website is adventureexperience.net. Adventureexperience.net, that's the speaker site. And then if you're interested in the books, Adventure Devos, again, DEVOS, adventuredevos.com if you want to check out the books. Otherwise, yeah, I'm probably speaking to a group near you sometime in the next couple of months. We'll have some fun that way.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that'd be a great show. So let me know, because if it's in the area, I'd love to come sit in the audience and listen.
You bet.
Well, and we'll put your website, and you said the books are on Amazon, correct?
Yep, Amazon, Barnes & Noble. You can get them just about anywhere. Yeah.
Awesome. So we'll put those in our show notes so that our audience can find them. And hey, man, cool. I really appreciate it. Wow, I almost forgot, Camden. Holy crap! Yes, we got to close out our show with what we learned. Man, I was ready to just say see you later, and
that means it's got to be you first this week, Dad. We got into a whole fight about it on the last episode.
Yeah. Well, wow, just one. All right, I have a couple, but my favorite is the math problem disruptor in a situation. I love that one. That is a great tool. I hope I never have to get into that situation again, but I'm gonna. Yeah, I might do something a little bit more complicated, like what's the square root of 32. But,
there you go.
But I love that disruptor to get the person who's in a bit of paralysis, in a panic mode or paralysis by analysis, whatever it is, using math, something like that, to disrupt them and bring them back into the, oh shit, here we go. Okay.
If I can interject on that, talk to your SF guys, because everyone's got their trick. We always associate with pulling people out of that freezing mode. You slap them in the face. That's how you break them out of it.
Yeah.
Okay, you can do that, but everyone's got their trick for getting someone back into the present. I'd be curious, on future shows, you let me know if you're ever going to run it by your friends, ask them here's the top 5 tips and tricks for getting people out of that freeze mode, back into thinking mode. Yeah, I'd be curious what they use as well.
That makes me think, going back so much to the rugby side of things.
Yeah.
We talked about like the getting fired up beforehand, how that doesn't really work in your field. I know that usually in most teams I've played for, about half the guys need to get fired up like they're going to run through a brick wall before the game. The other half are silent. And it's all about knowing what you are. Like, we're thinking about all these little triggers. I know I had so many things I would do in the rugby field just to help me mentally flip that switch and get ready for the next play. You got to have a short-term memory, right? And it's all about finding whatever that trick is that works for you and be able to flip that switch.
Yep.
So, Eric, what'd you learn?
Oh, again, right? What didn't I learn? Holy cow. I love, I'm in a general sense, I love that everything that works for hanging off a cliff, running river scenarios at the bottom of a 1,000-foot canyon, I love that you guys can apply that to work and business in the office space, which I'm always working to do, but boy, it can be tough sometimes. You guys do it with like I breathe, you immediately think of some way that this crazy scenario works in the office. But I also love that Cam is always bringing it back to the sports field. Ladies and gentlemen, we say the office, the river and the sports field are 3 different things. They're different areas. They're different disciplines. If I learned anything today, it's that they are not. They are all reflections of the same skill set. You're just choosing a different place to apply it.
100%.
Yeah.
All right, Cam, on you.
Well, I think this one came out of the room a little bit, but I had never really thought about practicing to build that positive framework. how if you're in that negative mindset, how when you're practicing, all you're really doing is building a positive outcome in your mind, so that then when you're looking at it, you have that positive frame that you're looking through things. I think that might have just been a simplification of things we had talked about, but that really just hit home with me, of that practice really just helps you get that positive attitude that you need to succeed.
Awesome.
I might have to interject because one guy corrected me one time. He's like, you say practice makes perfect. I'm like, yes, practice, practice, practice. He's like, how about perfect practice makes perfect? Mm-hmm. Okay, well, yeah, we can debate that on another show, but
we'll do the semantics all day.
Right.
Yeah. What I'll tell you is yes, perfect practice makes perfect, but really what practice does is it develops skills so that you can aspire to be perfect.
Exactly. Well, practice builds to perfect practice, which builds to perfect. There we go.
There we go. That nails it. Yes.
All right. I can retire now, right?
That wasn't mic drop. So
darn it. I'll stay on for another week.
Yeah. Hey, Eric, I really appreciate it, man. It's been a lot of fun having you on the show today.
Thanks so much, guys. This was tons of fun. Yeah, we'll do this again anytime.
Yeah, great talking with you, Eric.
Link up again, maybe catch one of your speaking gigs. So yeah,
absolutely. They are thrilling for sure. Are you a motivational speaker? No, I'm not. Motivation is a byproduct of my talks. We talk about learning and focus.
Love it. Awesome, man. Well, thanks again, and Merry Christmas, and enjoy the ride on the Grand Canyon.
Absolutely. Merry Christmas to you guys, and to the listeners who are catching this in January, February. Hey, Merry Christmas to you guys too. Right on.
Yeah.